Hello everyone. So in the last video what we did is we solved a simple circuit using KVL and KCL equations. And what I want to show you now in this video is how you can actually solve uh, this circuit in a way that's just much more straightforward using some additional tools that I'm going to show you. Oftentimes when you're solving a circuit, there is not one particular way to solve it. There's a whole lot of different tools that you can use to solve the circuit. So here's the circuit that we had. And we have Vs. We've got V0 is what we're wanting. And then we have R1, R2, R3, and R4. So last time we had to go through this whole process of writing up all these equations and doing algebra. And turns out there are much easier ways of doing this. And I'm going to introduce a few principles that are good tools to keep in your back pocket that ultimately are based on Ohm's law, KCL, KVL. But we can kind of keep these additional laws as extra tools to make things easier for us. So there are two things I want to talk about. One is I want to talk about equivalent resistance, and I want to talk about voltage division, the voltage division formula. So these two, oh, and if we have time, I might talk about the current division formula as well. But basically, um, these equations we'll talk about can make your life a lot easier when solving some of these circuits. So the whole concept, let's talk about the concept of equivalent resistance. Basically, let's say I have two wires poking out of a big blob and I don't know what's inside. Like there's some crazy complex combination of resistors and different things. And let's say then I applied a voltage, V, and I apply that voltage and then a current flows, I. Well, I could say that the equivalent resistance of that big box there basically is V over I. So even though I don't know if there's a single resistor inside this box here, this blob, I do know that it behaves essentially as a single resistance. And so it turns out that if you have combinations of resistors, you can combine them so that effectively um, they combine together in such a way that they act like a single resistor. So it turns out these two resistors in parallel, I can combine so that basically they act like a single equivalent resistance. These two resistors in series will act like a single equivalent resistance. And I can use these principles to help make the um, solution to this problem much more manageable. So the way we can do that is we can basically break this circuit down and simplify it. And when we simplify it, it becomes much easier to solve. So the rules when it comes to, you know what, actually let me move this. So the rules when it comes to combining resistances, there's two basic rules. So when you're combining resistors in series, so let's say you've got two resistors here, or actually you could go on and on. I'm gonna do dot 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 to signify that you could have an infinite number of these, and you label them as R1, R2, R3, dot 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 dot. The equivalent resistance, effectively all these resistors together, will act like a single resistor that is equal to R1 plus R2 plus R3 dot dot dot. You just add them all together. So that's pretty straightforward. When it comes to parallel resistors in parallel, so let's say you've got big string of resistors all in parallel, so R1, R2, R3, dot dot dot. The equivalent resistance that this whole string acts like is going to be equal to 1 over R1 plus 1 over R2 plus 1 over R3 dot dot dot. And so that's the formula that you use for that. It's a little more complex. If you have just two resistors, then the formula is a little simpler. So for this, if you have R1 and R2, the equivalent resistance of that is equal to R1 times R2 over R1 plus R2. So that's a pretty handy formula um, to use, and it's easier to memorize. So now that we have those tools under our belt, we can go ahead and make this circuit much more simple. So let's go ahead and open up a new page here. And we've got our circuit here. And what we can do is we can start combining resistors. So this combination here, R1 and R2, we can combine into a single resistor, R12. You can replace it. And then this parallel combination, oops, what did I just do? There we go. Okay. We can take this parallel combination and the parallel combination here. So if this is R3, this is R4, that'll be R3 times R4 over R3 plus R4. And the equivalent resistance here will be R1 plus R2. So we can rewrite this. So this is V0, or actually that was VS. VS R12, and then we'll call this, we'll actually call this R1 or R3, 4. So this is R3, 4, and this is V0. Now notice the circuit now is much more simple. So it becomes much easier to solve. So then we can go ahead and do our KVL here. So we can do a KVL loop here. And we can let's define this current as, we'll say it's I1. So then going around this loop here, we have minus Vs because we hit the minus sign there. And then let's go ahead and just define this as plus or minus V1, 2. So then plus V1, 2, and then plus 0 plus V0 is equal to 0. And then we know that V1, 2, based on Ohm's law, is equal to I1 times R1, 2. So we plug that in, minus Vs plus I1 R1, 2 plus V0 is equal to 0. But then there's actually another, we can apply Ohm's law again. So I1 is going to be equal to Vs divided by R1, 2 plus R3, 4. And the reason is because of this concept of equivalent resistance. We know that R1, 2 plus R3, 4 would combine into another resistance. And then at that point, we know that the voltage Vs, we know the voltage across it. So Vs divided by R1, 2 plus R3, 4, that would give us the current I1. So then we can plug that into there. And at that point, it's you only have one unknown, which is V0, and you can just do the algebra and solve for V0. And you'll find that you will get the same equation that we did using the other methods. So this approach using equivalent resistance helps to simplify the analysis. And in the next video, I'll do one more video with this circuit to talk about a few other tools that you can use, a different method of solving it. All right, well, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Hello, everybody. Thanks for watching. If you found this content helpful, would you please consider liking and subscribing to the channel? That will help other people find it. And if you won't do it for me, will you do it for my cat, Muon? Named after my favorite subatomic particle, by the way. So, she will be very, very upset if you do not like and subscribe. So please, don't disappoint. How could you say no to this cuteness?